Conspiracy theories are most often a smokescreen to divert us from the true evil.
My dad was right. This family's money is dirty.
Imagination is far more fascinating than reality.
Welcome to Working for Uncle Henry, the podcast. I'm the series author and your narrator, Angela Mullins. Warning, there are some loud bursts in this episode. Chapter 23. The mixed smells of mustiness and disinfectant aroused Jennifer's consciousness, bringing her quickly to her senses. She squeezed her eyes tight, then opened them wide, trying to take in all the light she could from the one lit fixture high above. Awareness of cold, damp concrete underneath prompted her to an upright position. She surveyed the surroundings to sort out where she was. She braced herself, palms on the floor. Her fingers touched skin. Parker's hand. She shook him. He didn't move. She felt his pulse. He had one, but he was still very much out of it. Perhaps her frequent alcohol and drug usage made her less susceptible to the effects of the contents of the syringes. Wherever they were, it was quiet. Quiet enough to hear her own heartbeat. And hear it she did. She had never known it to pound this way, at least not from fear. That wasn't something she tolerated. Fear meant there was something to lose, and deep down, she had never had anything she really feared losing, except money, maybe. She didn't like this feeling. She took a deep breath and scanned the room again, her eyes gradually adjusting to the dimness. The brick and mortar walls of the 20 by 20 room were old and damp and appeared to have recently had a water leak or been washed down. The smell of chlorine hinted toward the latter. Well-worn wooden benches were bolted to each of the side walls. It reminded her of a dungeon set where she had done a lingerie shoot a couple of years back. They were in the middle of the room. She scrambled to her feet to check the door. It was thick, solid metal. No knobs, handles, or hinges, and it wasn't budging. Suddenly, 100 decibels of heavy metal music blasted from speakers hidden in all four corners of the room. Through the sparse light, she saw Parker's arm move. She rushed to him. He groaned, eked his eyes open enough to see Jennifer kneeling over him, then scowled and covered his ears. Ah, what is that? I believe it's what your father would call the devil's music, she shouted. Parker directed his scowl to her and sat up beside her. Where are we? We're locked in a dark, dank room, she answered sarcastically, her feelings of fear now dissipating. He blinked repeatedly, waiting for his eyes to adjust to the dim light and focus back into consciousness. I guess you've tried that, he said, nodding toward the door. It's locked and solid. No one would hear us beating on it. Are you okay? His gaze was softer than his voice due to the loud music. She nodded again. You? My head hurts, he said, attempting to massage the pain away. Have you seen anyone? I just came to right before you. They sat quietly through the same blasting song again because it was too tiring to talk over it. Both of them still weak from the drug. Finally, the music stopped as suddenly as it had started, and seconds later, the one light fixture turned off, sending the room into total darkness. Their frustrated sighs were almost in sync. I'm sorry, Parker whispered. I should have noticed that gate. I totally didn't do anything Hugo taught me. It isn't your fault. I was the one driving, remember? And I've had Hugo's training as well. After a few moments of dark silence, the sound of a ticking clock came over the loudspeakers. It wasn't as loud as the music, but certainly as annoying. It was too dark to move. There was nothing for their eyes to adjust to. So they sat, their shoulders touching just enough to not feel alone. Several minutes later, the ticking stopped. Then a ceiling full of bright white fixtures lit up the room. It was as blinding as the darkness had been. They winced and covered their eyes, but only until the heavy metal music resumed, forcing their hands to their ears. Parker's pupils finally shrunk enough to spot one of the wall benches. He crawled to his feet and shuffled around to stretch, wondering if anyone outside the room could hear the music. He settled himself on one of the wall benches to think and pray. Jennifer stretched out on the floor, face upward, eyes closed, trying to calm herself in corpse pose. It took a while for them to realize the lights had been slowly dimming. Once they were at about half the brightness they started with, the music stopped, but only for a moment. The next thing they heard was pure absurdity. Ringing out from their four corners were Barney and friends singing, "I love you, you love me, we're a happy family." Jennifer sat up. "Oh, you've got to be kidding me. What are they trying to do?" "Torture techniques," Parker stated. Jennifer glared at him. He shrugged. "You study a lot about war when you major in history." He continued his pondering and praying, wishing he could have one of those extra-dimensional, not really a miracle miracles like Henry had talked about in his Flatlander explanation. Perhaps his faith was lacking, but somehow he didn't think he was going to get escorted out of here by an angel from another dimension. Jennifer paced the floor as if the Barney song disrupted her temperament more than anything else they had experienced so far. Finally, after the song had looped a couple dozen times, she squatted in front of Parker, gazed into his eyes, her nose almost touching his. "I love you," she whispered and kissed him softly on the lips. Then, as if she had been shot up from a cannon, she jumped up and screamed, "God, I wish they'd stop playing this song." She watched Parker sitting quietly on the bench. "Why are you just sitting there all calm-like?" Parker looked away thoughtfully, then back at her. "I figure one of us needs to pray." "Psst," she scoffed. "So you don't believe in prayer or God at all? Not even when trouble comes along?" He felt a twinge of self-righteousness in his gut with that last question. Her hands flew to her hips. "You want to have that conversation now?" He shrugged. What else is there to do? She smiled mischievously, then looked away, her hands surrendering from their position on her hips. "What do you believe about God?" "I don't know," she scowled. "I don't not believe in him." She seemed to be pondering the question for the first time. "I've never really thought about it. I don't really think I care one way or the other." As Parker contemplated a response to an answer he had not expected, the music stopped and the lights flickered off. "Great," Jennifer said, throwing her hands up. She settled herself into a rhythm of deep cleansing breaths, forcing herself to utilize everything she knew about yoga relaxation techniques. Parker carefully inspected the room for any glimpse of light indicating cracks or holes in the walls, but there didn't seem to be any way out of that room except through the tightly sealed door. He returned to the bench and started softly rattling off every Bible verse he could bring to memory, particularly those about light. "Let there be light. The people who walked in darkness have seen a great light. Those who dwelt in a land of deep darkness, on them has light shone. Your word is a lamp to my feet and a light to my path." The room lit up brightly again, and Parker smiled. But the next several hours brought a randomness of bright lights, lights flashing, darkness, and loud music and sounds. Finally, everything turned off, except the one center light, returning the room to its original state. But a noise at the door drew their attention. With a suctioned release, the door slid open, and a burly, bald guy rushed in and grabbed Jennifer's arm. "He wants to see you," he growled. Parker jumped up. "What do you want with her?" he demanded, scampering toward them. "It's personal," the man growled, and not with an accent. He swiftly pulled Jennifer through the doorway. The door closed frighteningly fast before Parker could reach it. Wouldn't want to get caught in it, for sure. Torture techniques can run the gamut and have been throughout history, but research indicates psychological torture is far more effective than physical. This chapter contains examples of those techniques. Thanks for listening. Be sure to check out the show notes for goodies, and let me know what you think about the podcast in the comments and share it with a friend.